was forced to face the skeletons in my closet when I left my teaching career. And I left my teaching career with no choice of my own, really. I was so burnout and so miserable that my husband forced me to leave. And if it wasn't for that, I would have still stuck with it and trudged through, even though I hated every second of being in the classroom and dealing with the stress and the anxiety and all the things that came with really a career that I thought I was going to love that I absolutely hated. And when I left, I was thrust into being a stay-at-home mom, and I never had that vision for myself. I always thought that I was going to teach until I was in my 90s, and they were going to force me to retire and say, look, you wrinkly old hag, get out before you die in front of the kids or before you break a hip. And so, very naive to think that, yes, I know. And so, I always had that vision of myself of being a teacher and only being home with my kids in the summer. And during the school year, they were going to be daycare kids. And so, when I didn't have that plan any longer, I felt really lost and directionless and hopeless. And, you know, it's kind of taboo to not love being a stay-at-home mom. And granted, this was back in 2014. So social media was a thing, but I just wasn't on social media. And I still had this this impression that I was supposed to love being a stay-at-home mom all the time because I saw the other stay-at-home moms at my children's school at drop off, being sing-songy and just acting like everything was a Disney fairy tale. And there are unicorns flying through the sky with pink fluffy rain clouds of cotton candy shooting out of the air. And so that was not my experience. And I felt like there was something wrong with me for not having that experience. And so I trudged through every day feeling just defeated and like I really wasn't measuring up. I felt like I didn't measure up as a teacher. And then I felt like I wasn't measuring up as a mom or a wife to my husband because I was still miserable, even though leaving my teaching career was supposed to take the misery away and it didn't. And so finally, in November of 2014, I thought, okay, I'm still having really unhealthy thoughts about continuing with my life or running away and just escaping it all. But I didn't want that to be the legacy for my daughters or for my marriage or for myself, really. So I figured, okay, I'll go to therapy. And I expected her to say, yes, Kim, you're having an identity crisis. Here are the 3 easy ways to fix it. But it was actually so much more than that. And that's where all the skeletons that had been hiding in my closet for so long that I didn't even know they were there started slowly creeping out. And so I thought that, okay, it's just burnout. I was miserable in my career because I was too busy being a people pleaser. I was so filled with self-doubt and comparisonitis and guilt because I didn't make it in my career and guilt because I wasn't loving stay-at-home mom life. And that she was going to have this 3-step process to just take it all away. And what I wasn't prepared for, but actually it was really a blessing in disguise, is because I was forced to confront the trauma in my past because in therapy it was dredged up. There was no avoiding it. So first it was codependency and enmeshment. I had never heard those words before. And then it was anxiety. And then it was childhood emotional neglect. And all of these labels and topics were coming up because we were talking about the childhood trauma that I had experienced and also the domestic violence I experienced with my high school boyfriend. And so as I was having these labels and these topics thrown at me left and right, really faster than I could even begin to process them, I just decided, you know what, I can't keep living like this and I have to do something about it. So I ripped off the mask of this identity crisis that I had been hiding behind. And I just dove headfirst into the work because I thought, okay, if this really is all coming to light from childhood trauma, domestic violence, generational trauma, all these things, I have 2 little girls who are going to follow in my footsteps with all of this dysfunction, and I just couldn't have that. And so as I dove into the work, there were so many things that ended up really being amazing from all of the hard work. Because let's be real, a healing journey is not easy. It can feel frustrating. It can feel overwhelming. It can feel hard. It can feel so shitty that sometimes you just want to say, that's it. I give up. I'm done. I'll just stay the way that I am. I'll just let things continue to be the way they are. And that's just going to be good enough. But as I continued to do the work, I noticed that my mental health was improving. I was less anxious. I was not walking around like a ticking time bomb because I really learned what was within my control. And it's not what I thought. I'll say it was less, I had the control over less things than I thought I did, but at the same time, control over things that I wasn't even attempting to control. I was so worried about controlling other people and all of the things around me that I wasn't focused on controlling myself. I was able to figure out really what was triggering me and then having a plan in place for when those triggers were there and I could work through it. So I didn't feel like I was going to come unraveled and unhinged in the blink of an eye. And I also really did a lot of work on my limiting beliefs and I really changed the meanings around them. And so those things were really just a huge game changer for my mental health in general. And I started noticing it, I'm not going to say right away, but pretty quickly. I also had better physical health. I was sleeping better because I wasn't stressed out all the time. So it was actually me falling asleep from having a normal level of being tired, not this sheer exhaustion that I was feeling. I wasn't just passing out because the day had been so stressful and so toxic that I just exhausted. It wasn't like that anymore. And I was going into like worry spirals less. I wasn't having these thought loops on constant replay like I had in the past, over analyzing things that I had said, things that I had done, things that people had said to me, things that people had done to me. I wasn't staying in that the way that I used to. I was able to think about it, process it, and let it go instead of having it consume me. I was also making time to eat better and I was actually making time to exercise. Now, this isn't to say that I was exercising consistently because there was mindset work around that too, but I was allowing myself the opportunities to do so, where in the past I had just been so consumed with life in general that I was just grabbing anything I could, just to put food in my face. And I was had lost a crazy amount of weight. It was very unhealthy, but I was also giving myself the opportunity to exercise. And it was hard. It is still hard because I'm not in the shape that I want to be. And I definitely wasn't back then, but I was willing to try. I was willing to experiment with things to see what kind of exercises I liked and what I didn't. I even allowed myself to train for a 5K and a 10K. And those were all new experiences that I would have never given myself the opportunity to have before diving into this work. The other thing too is that I was actually growing more on a personal level than I ever even imagined possible. I had more self-awareness about my behaviors, how I let the behaviors of others affect me. And I was also able to bounce back from things so much faster. Uh, Before doing all of this work, if something triggered me or something upset me, or I was angry about something, or I felt wronged about something, I would stay in this funk for days, maybe even a week. It would just fester and linger, and I wouldn't be able to shake it. And I would be so emotional, crying, angry, defeated, depressed, sad, all of these things. But after doing the work, I could just bounce back much faster because I was able to understand what I was going through, work through it, and then let it go. But the thing that was the most important to me was that I actually started having a better relationship with my children and a better relationship with my husband. Because when I was in the thick of this struggle, when I started therapy, and even shortly after I had started therapy, I was miserable and my husband was taxed from his stressful work schedule that I really didn't know if our marriage was going to be able to pull through and make it past this. But as I started doing the work, I understood what he was dealing with his job, and I wasn't attaching that to the way that he felt about me or our marriage or our kids. I was able to separate things more. And so I was able to be more compassionate for him and give him the support and understanding that he needed. But I was able to do that for myself, and I was no longer reliant on him to do it for me. But I was also having a better relationship with my kids because I was more patient. I was also more compassionate with them. I was more understanding, and I was just more available for them. So I didn't feel like I wanted to sleep all day. We actually went out and did things. We would go to the zoo, we would go to the park, we would go to mommy and me groups. And it just was really such a big difference in from where I started and from where I could see myself going. And if I had not been willing to confront the past the trauma, the domestic violence, I wouldn't have been able to have the breakthroughs and the improvement that I did. And so while it might feel daunting and really not a fun thing to do, I know it's like the last thing on the list that you want to do is dredge up all this stuff. But I'll tell you that you can do the work without really dredging too deep and re-traumatizing yourself. So it's so, 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 so important and so needed and so pivotal that you face the skeletons in the closet and you confront the past and you just rip the mask off and move forward, because you'll be so thankful when you get to the other side. So be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Tell me if you can relate to anything in this video, if you felt the same way when you started your healing journey, or if you're just getting ready to start your healing journey and you feel like this and you're not sure if you can make it another step further, because it just feels like it's just too hard. But I will say, if you do nothing else, make time for yourself, because that is super important as you're working on this deep, deep work to get to the other side of the trauma. So thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next video.